Before the story truly begins, let the day begin to fade. You do not need to replay it. You do not need to understand it. You do not need to hold it together any longer. Let your body rest where it is. Let your breath move without instruction, in and out. Imagine the world growing quieter, not suddenly, but gradually, as if the noise is dimming itself out of kindness. This story comes from a time when people believed that sound itself carried meaning, that music could travel where words could not, that listening was a sacred act. Tonight, we follow Orpheus, not as a hero of action, but as a keeper of sound, a man who learned early that the world listens back when approached gently. Orpheus lived where hills softened into valleys and stone paths remembered footsteps. He did not seek attention. He did not raise his voice. Instead, he listened. He listened to the low murmur of wind through tall grass, to the way water shifted its tone as it moved from stream to river, to the silence that followed birdsong, full rather than empty. When Orpheus played his lyre, he did not play to be heard. He played to respond. Each note arrived slowly, as if it had waited its turn. People noticed this. They felt it in their chests before they understood it with their minds. Those who were restless found their shoulders easing. Those who carried grief felt it loosen, just slightly, as if someone had opened a window in a long-closed room. Children stopped running. Animals stilled. Even the stones seemed to lean closer. Orpheus did not perform. He conversed. The lyre was light in his hands, but the space between notes was where his true attention lived. He knew that silence was not the absence of sound. It was where sound rested. And so he allowed pauses, long ones, comfortable ones. In the evenings, people gathered nearby, not in crowds, but loosely, as though they did not wish to disturb the air. Fires burned low, voices dropped. Orpheus would sit, sometimes with his eyes closed, sometimes gazing into nothing at all. The music moved outward, then inward. It filled the space, then left room again. Listening became easy. Time loosened its grip. It was during one of these quiet evenings that Eurydice first noticed him. Not because he stood apart, but because he made space. She sat nearby, listening the way one listens when there is nothing to defend. Orpheus felt her presence before he saw her, a shift in the air, a new stillness. When he looked up, their eyes met briefly, not with urgency, but with recognition. Neither of them spoke. The music continued, and something gentle took root. Eurydice did not interrupt the sound with words. She let it arrive fully, and in doing so, became part of it. When the music ended, no one rushed to fill the quiet. People lingered. Orpheus set the lyre down carefully, as one sets down something living. Eurydice stayed. They spoke later, softly, about ordinary things. Paths, weather, small observations that carried no weight. Yet something had already begun. Their connection grew not through declarations, but through shared stillness. Walking together without destination, sitting side by side without expectation. Orpheus played, Eurydice listened. And listening, he realized, was love. Their days unfolded gently. Music became part of daily rhythm, not constant but present, like breath. And in Eurydice's presence, Orpheus learned something new, that music could be answered not with applause, but with quiet companionship. This was the beginning, not of tragedy, not of loss, but of devotion built from patience, trust, and the shared discipline of listening. Let the sound settle now. There is no rush. We will continue when the silence is ready. As days passed, Orpheus and Eurydice learned the shape of one another's presence, not through urgency, not through declaration, but through attention. They walked familiar paths, sometimes speaking, sometimes not. Eurydice had a way of noticing small things, the way light gathered at the edges of stone, the subtle change in birdsong before evening arrived, the quiet satisfaction of sitting somewhere with nothing to accomplish. Orpheus found that her noticing changed how he listened. Music, in her company, became less about expression and more about sharing space. He would play softly while she sat nearby, her presence neither demanding nor distant. And in those moments, sound felt complete. Eurydice did not ask Orpheus to play more often. She did not ask him to explain his music. She understood something instinctively, that music needs room. She let it arrive when it wished. They shared meals slowly. They shared quiet evenings. They shared the understanding that love did not need to announce itself to be real. And so their bond deepened without weight. Eurydice's laughter was gentle, not loud, not sharp. It rose and faded like wind through leaves. Orpheus learned her rhythms, when she needed company and when she needed space. She, in turn, learned when his silence meant listening, and when it meant music forming inwardly. Their love was built not from intensity, but from steadiness. And steadiness, as the world knows, is a rare and precious thing. Time passed in this way, unmarked by urgency. But change does not always arrive with warning. Sometimes it arrives as absence. One day, Eurydice did not return from a familiar path. There was no sound of alarm, no sudden rupture, only the quiet realization that something expected had not occurred. Orpheus waited, at first calmly, then longer. The light shifted, evening came. Still, Eurydice did not appear. Orpheus did not run. He did not shout her name into the hills. He listened. He listened to the wind, to the distant water, to the stillness that answered back. And in that stillness, he felt the shape of absence. Absence does not shout. It settles. It moves into the spaces where presence once lived. Orpheus walked the paths they shared. He played softly, as if sound itself might guide him. But the music returned only echoes. Eurydice had slipped beyond reach, not violently, not cruelly, simply beyond. Orpheus did not understand how, and understanding in that moment felt less important than acknowledgement. She was not where she had been. Grief arrived quietly, not as despair, but as weight, a heaviness that slowed his steps, that lengthened his pauses. Music changed again. It grew softer, more spacious. Each note held longing, but not desperation. Orpheus did not try to fill the silence left by Eurydice's absence. He allowed it. He sat in it, listening. Because absence, too, has a sound. In the days that followed, people noticed the change. The music still comforted, but it carried depth. Those who listened felt seen in places they had not maimed. They felt their own losses acknowledged without being reopened. Orpheus had learned something difficult without choosing to, that love continues even when presence changes. Yet something restless remained, a pull inward, not toward despair, but toward understanding. Orpheus sensed that Eurydice had not vanished into nothing. She had moved into a quieter place. In dreams, he heard faint echoes, not voices, not words, just a sense of distance that was not empty. And so the idea formed, slowly, carefully. If music could reach hearts and calm storms and soften stone, perhaps it could reach where Eurydice had gone. This was not hope as urgency, it was hope as listening. Orpheus did not decide to descend suddenly. He sat with the thought. He played into the night, not asking questions, but offering sound. The music changed again. It became quieter still, notes spaced far apart, as though each one needed room to travel. The world responded. Paths seemed to open. Air grew heavier, not oppressive, just deep. Silence listened back. Orpheus understood then that his journey would not be one of force. It would be one of restraint, of walking where sound fades without demanding it return. And so, with patience rather than resolve, he prepared. Not with supplies, not with weapons, but with attention. He rested, he waited, he listened. And in that listening, the path inward began to reveal itself, not as a door, but as a gradual quieting of the world around him. The descent would come next, not as a fall, but as a deepening. We will continue. We will continue when the sound is ready. The descent did not begin with a step. It began with a pause. Orpheus noticed that the world around him had grown quieter than usual. Not empty, not absent, just attentive. The wind no longer rushed. Birdsong softened, then faded. Even the distant sounds of water seemed to lower themselves into hush. Orpheus stood still, his lyre resting lightly in his hands, and listened. Silence did not feel like an ending. It felt like an invitation. He followed it. Not downward at first, but inward. Paths he had walked many times before now felt deeper, as if they led somewhere beyond their visible ends. Stone steps cooled beneath his feet. Shadows lengthened without menace. This was not a place of fear. It was a place of rest. The lower realm revealed itself gradually, as all important things do. It did not announce its borders. It did not demand acknowledgement. It simply became still. Orpheus sensed it in the way sound changed. Echoes lingered longer. Notes traveled farther before returning. He played, softly. The first notes did not rush forward. They waited. Then they moved, touching stone, air, memory. The sound was not loud, but it was clear. It carried intention. The path beneath Orpheus's feet wound gently downward. Walls rose around him, smooth and ancient, as if shaped by patience. Lantern light appeared, not bright, but warm. The kind of light that does not push darkness away, but sits comfortably beside it. Orpheus walked slowly. There was no reason to hurry. Each step felt measured, as if the ground itself was asking to be approached with care. The air grew cooler, not cold, comforting. This realm was not silent. It listened. Every sound, a footstep, a breath, a note, was received fully. Nothing was lost here. Nothing rushed past. Orpheus understood then that this place held what the world above could no longer carry. Memories, unfinished thoughts, love without shape. He played again. The music did not echo wildly. It settled. It smoothed the air like hands over water. Those who dwelled in stillness paused, not in surprise, but in recognition. They remembered this sound. Orpheus passed figures seated in quiet reflection. They did not reach for him. They did not turn away. They listened. And in listening, their posture softened, their rest deepened. Music did not wake them. It allowed them to remain at peace. Orpheus felt no fear, only care. This place was not cruel. It was careful. Each movement mattered. Each sound carried weight. And Orpheus, who had learned patience through love, moved accordingly. At the heart of the lower realm, the space widened, not into grandeur, but into openness, a still chamber where silence felt held. Here, the keepers of stillness remained, not rulers, not judges, stewards. They did not speak. They did not need to. Orpheus understood their presence the way one understands gravity, through feeling, not explanation. He raised the lyre, and before sound emerged, he waited. A long moment, letting intention settle. Then he played. The music moved slowly, as if aware of its surroundings. Each note was deliberate. It carried no demand, no insistence, only truth. The truth of devotion without ownership, of longing without force, of grief that does not harden. The music told of Eurydice, not as loss, but as presence transformed. It spoke of evenings shared, of listening together, of love that rested rather than clung. The chamber listened. Silence leaned closer. The keepers of stillness responded not with words, but with allowance. The path forward opened, not dramatically, but gently. Eurydice was near, not visible, not distant. Present in the way echoes are present, felt rather than seen. Orpheus played again, this time softer still. The music reached beyond the chamber, into spaces that did not answer quickly. And from those spaces, movement stirred. Eurydice followed the sound, not pulled, not summoned, drawn. She emerged quietly, like breath returning after rest. Her presence felt familiar, yet altered, not diminished, not weakened, simply deeper. Orpheus did not turn. He did not rush. He listened. The keepers of stillness offered guidance, not as command, but as trust. The path upward was open. Eurydice could follow, but only if Orpheus could walk without looking back. Not as punishment, as practice, a practice of faith. Orpheus understood. To look back would be to doubt the music, to doubt listening. Love, in this moment, asked for restraint. He accepted, not easily, but willingly. He turned toward the path and began to walk. The ascent begins next, slow, careful, and quiet. The ascent began the way the descent had, without urgency. Orpheus placed one foot before the other, carefully, as though each step were a note in a long, unfolding melody. The path did not rush upward. It curved gently, winding through quiet stone corridors that felt less like tunnels and more like passages between breaths. Behind him, there was movement, not loud, not uncertain, measured. Orpheus did not turn. He listened. The sound of footsteps behind him was faint, almost indistinguishable from the echo of his own, but he felt the difference. Listening became everything. The rhythm of walking, the cadence of breath, the subtle way sound changed as the air grew lighter. Music did not pour outward now. It lived within him, a steady presence, like a held note. This was the discipline of trust, not the absence of doubt, but the choice to walk without surrendering to it. Every instinct urged Orpheus to look back, to confirm, to reassure himself that Eurydice was truly there. But love, he understood now, is not reassurance. It is allowance. He continued. The path grew brighter, not suddenly, but by degrees. Stone softened to earth. Cool air warmed gently. The space ahead felt open, alive. Behind him, the presence remained. Eurydice followed, not bound, not compelled. She followed because the music still lived between them, because trust, once offered, had been accepted. The walk took time. Time measured not in distance, but in patience. Moments stretched. Silence deepened. Orpheus became aware of how rarely people allow silence to last. Here, it was essential. Each pause was a promise, each step a commitment to not knowing fully, to not controlling what followed. And in that restraint, Orpheus felt something unexpected. Peace. Not relief, but steadiness. The path narrowed briefly, as if testing resolve. Orpheus slowed further. He focused on the sound of his breath, on the steady rhythm of movement. He trusted the echo behind him, without naming it. Then, near the threshold where the lower realm thinned into the air of the living world, doubt arrived. Not as fear, not as panic, as tenderness. The kind that aches because it cares. Orpheus felt the nearness of Eurydice more clearly than before. So close, almost within reach. The world above waited, sunlight filtering faintly ahead. And in that moment of closeness, Orpheus felt the weight of longing. He turned, not quickly, not wildly, with the gentleness of someone wanting to see what they already love. The music stopped. Silence returned. Eurydice did not cry out. She did not reach. She met Orpheus's gaze calmly, with recognition, with gratitude. And then, like sound fading after resonance, she receded. Not torn away, not taken, released. Orpheus understood instantly. The trust had not failed. The lesson had completed itself. Love had been carried as far as it could go without becoming possession. Eurydice faded into stillness, not lost, but returned to the place where quiet holds what it loves. Orpheus stood alone on the path, but alone did not mean empty.
He did not collapse, he did not cry out. He listened. The silence was different now, not heavy, full, filled with memory, with meaning, with echoes that did not ache. Orpheus turned forward again and completed the ascent. The world above received him without ceremony. Sunlight warmed his face. Birdsong returned gently. Life continued. Orpheus returned to his place among people. He carried no bitterness. He carried depth. When he played now, the music had changed. It was slower, more spacious. Each note honored what could not be held without trying to reclaim it. People listened. They felt something shift inside themselves. Grief softened, fear loosened. They heard in Orpheus's music the truth they had been avoiding. That love does not vanish when presence changes. It transforms. Orpheus became a guide, not by instruction, but by example. He showed that listening is sometimes the most faithful act, that restraint can be an expression of care, that letting go does not erase what came before. In time, Orpheus no longer searched the world for Eurydice. He felt her in quiet moments, in the pause between notes, in the hush before sleep. She lived in the listening itself. And now, as this story draws toward rest, let the final echoes settle. Imagine Orpheus at dusk, sitting beneath a darkening sky. The lyre rests beside him. The air is calm.
The story does not end loudly. It fades, as all gentle things do. If you are still awake, let your body soften further. If sleep has come, let it deepen. Nothing more is required. Listening has done its work. Love has spoken without demanding reply. Good night.